welcome to this Classic Briefs Explainer. Let's jump right in. Today we're diving into E.M. Forster's absolute classic, A Room with a View. Now, on the surface, this looks like a perfectly polite, scenic story about Edwardian manners and high society travel. But underneath all that, we're going to uncover a genuine existential crisis. It's really a story about a young woman making the ultimate choice. Does she live the life society expects of her, or the life that actually feels true?
You know, you might pick up this book expecting a slow, delicate little romance about finding a wealthy husband. But reality check, this is actually a sharp, fiercely observant coming-of-age story. This isn't just some polite tea party we're looking at here. It's a high-stakes battle for a young woman's soul as she quite literally wakes up to her own life and tries to break out of the societal cages built all around her.
So let's look at how this all starts in Section 1, Italy and the Awakening. Meet our protagonist, Lucy Honeychurch. Her entire worldview gets flipped completely upside down when she travels abroad. And right away, we have to ask, what does this title actually mean? Well, A Room with a View is this gorgeous, powerful metaphor. It symbolizes openness, emotional possibility, true freedom, basically a wider life. And it's set in stark contrast to closed-off, restrictive spaces. The whole thing kicks off at the Pension Bertolini in Florence. Lucy and her older cousin are promised a room overlooking the beautiful Arno River, but instead, they're shoved into a room looking into a stifling, sunless courtyard. That missing view sets the entire story and Lucy's massive internal conflict in motion.
Right off the bat, this sets up a huge tug-of-war for Lucy. On one side, you've got the English tourists, people like her cousin Charlotte Bartlett. They live by rigid rules, they keep their noses buried in their Baedeker guidebooks, and they prioritize polite manners above literally everything else. But on the other side, you have true Italy. This is represented by the Emersons, an older man and his son, George. They're messy, they're passionate, they're direct. They represent a truly authentic, unpolished way of living. I mean, they even offer to trade their rooms, which do have a view, with Lucy. That's a total breach of etiquette that completely shocks polite society, but it introduces Lucy to what genuine kindness actually looks like.
In this whole awakening, it absolutely peaks during a fateful carriage ride to the hills of Fiesole. In a split second that totally shatters all those stuffy Edwardian expectations, George Emerson steps out of the bushes and kisses Lucy right there among a field of wild blue violets. It's sudden, it's passionate, and it forces Lucy to confront real, overwhelming feeling for the very first time in her incredibly sheltered life.
But of course, every escape attempt has a pullback. Let's move to Section 2, the drawing room trap.
So, Lucy goes back to the safety of restrictive English society. And what does she do? She gets engaged to a man named Cecil Vyse. Now, Cecil's mentality is 100% bound to the drawing room. He's actually described in the story as medieval, meaning he represents this intense asceticism and emotional limitation. He is completely obsessed with social performance, status, and having control. And here is the most dangerous part. He literally mistakes good manners for good morals. He's the kind of guy who prefers curated things like books and art over actual messy, breathing people. He is the ultimate gatekeeper of high society.
There's this one brilliant remark Lucy makes that perfectly captures the dynamic between them. She tells Cecil, "I'd rather that you connected me with a room with no view, I fancy." It is such a profound moment of self-awareness for her. She realizes Cecil just wants to protect her, to curate her like a piece of fine art, effectively keeping her safely indoors and shutting out the vibrant, unpredictable, chaotic view of real life.
Which brings us right to the core of the story in Section 3, Two Ways to Live.
Because look, Lucy isn't just choosing between two different guys here, she is choosing between two entirely different ways of existing. Let's break this down. First, you have George Emerson. His domain is nature, the physical body, the open air, which gets perfectly captured later by this joyous, muddy swim in a woodland pond. His expression is all about honesty, directness, and passion. And how does he view Lucy? He wants her to have her own voice. Now contrast that with Cecil Vyse. His domain is the drawing room, the pure intellect, strictly indoors. His expression relies entirely on performance, control, and, frankly, sarcasm. And most tellingly, he wants to mold and govern Lucy. Basically, George is the open window, and Cecil is the closed curtain.
George actually sees exactly what's happening, and he desperately tries to make Lucy see the trap she's walking into. He hits her with this incredible warning. He's the type who's kept Europe back for 1,000 years. Every moment of his life, he's forming you. And you of all women, listen to his voice instead of to your own? George recognizes that Cecil's perfectly polite manners are really just a mask for a deep, suffocating desire to govern her very soul. So we are left with this massive internal crisis for our protagonist. As these two colliding worlds force her hand, we have to ask the big question. Will Lucy choose the life society expects of her, or the life that actually feels true? It's an existential crossroads that honestly feels just as relevant to us today as it did a century ago. And navigating that choice leads us straight into Section 4, the disaster within. Unfortunately, breaking free of societal expectations is incredibly hard, and early on, the pressure to conform actually wins. Driven by this intense fear of a scandal, a fear totally drilled into her by her cousin Charlotte, Lucy starts building an absolute fortress of lies to protect herself from her own authenticity. First, she lies to George, flat out denying her feelings and sending him away. Second, she lies to Cecil. She does break off the engagement, but she hides the real reason why. Third, she lies to her family, pretending she just wants independence. And finally, worst of all, she lies to herself. To keep this ultimate lie going, Lucy comes up with a drastic plan. She decides she's going to run away to Constantinople with two elderly sisters, the Miss Allens. By fleeing the country entirely, she is choosing to completely close the shutters on her emotional life. She would rather accept the sterile emotional safety of becoming a solitary, closed-off woman than face the messy, terrifying reality that she is desperately in love with George Emerson. Thankfully, that is not where the story ends. Let's look at Section 5, the courage to see. This disaster gets totally derailed by the ultimate champion of truth in the novel, George's father, old Mr. Emerson. In this profoundly emotional intervention, he just cuts right through all of Lucy's polite societal lies. He tells her, "You love the boy. It isn't possible to love and to part. You will wish that it was. You can transmute love, ignore it, muddle it, but you can never pull it out of you." He forces her to actually see clearly and to feel honestly, completely stripping away all that exhausting Edwardian decorum. He essentially shows her that growing up takes unbelievable bravery. It comes down to this contrast. The fences versus the garden. Lucy has to choose whether to live a life boxed in by the fences, the fear, the manners, the expectations of everyone else, or to finally enter the garden. Entering the garden means stepping into a life of truth, a place where we no longer despise our bodies or our genuine emotions or our true selves. It requires the immense courage to step out of that stuffy drawing room, tear down the fences, and embrace the raw, unfiltered view of life. And beautifully enough, having finally found that courage, the explainer resolves right back where it all started. We return to the Pension Bertolini in Florence. It's springtime. George and Lucy are married, and they are standing there looking out the open window together at the Arno River. By choosing authenticity over what her class expected of her, Lucy finally, truly, has her room with a view. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I've got a question for you to chew on. What are your fences? Are you living the life society expects of you, or the life that actually feels true? Even a century later, a room with a view still deeply matters. It's a gorgeous reminder that growing up isn't just about choosing the right romantic partner. It is about deciding whether to stay in the safety of the drawing room or finding the courage to open the window, see clearly, feel honestly, and finally live freely.